doing a lot of self-reflection too, to where you can see your own flaws. I feel like that's also really helpful in a relationship. When you have enough self-awareness and self-reflection to see your past flaws, maybe how you've changed, and also see maybe what you're currently going through. Because I feel like, no human is ever perfect. But when you can recognize those things within yourself, you can kind of see them within another person, and you can see the truth behind a person, the truth behind maybe their actions or what they say. And I feel like it offers a better dynamic because you won't get offended as easily if you're very self-aware and you accept yourself and love yourself. I feel like that's one of the biggest things to work on. And I feel like it really helps a relationship because communication is a lot easier when you've done that shadow work and you've discovered the more shadow aspects of yourself, which is the more unconscious, maybe parts of ourselves that get triggered, or the parts of ourselves that we try to repress sometimes. The more that we can love those parts and accept those, I feel like it just adds to the ability to communicate with your partner and to also see and accept those parts within someone else too.
Could you expand on shadow work a little bit?
Yeah, so shadow work, the reason why it's called shadow work is because our shadow is basically a word for our unconscious. It's the shadow. Whereas awareness is the light. It's the things that we're aware of. We've spread light on it. We can see it for what it is. But the shadow is kind of like, I don't know what's under there. Maybe it's a part that I'm not aware of. So our shadow self can be parts of ourselves that were wounded in the past, maybe from growing up, maybe from childhood, maybe from previous relationships or anything in life, different insecurities that we might have. And that shadow can come out without us being consciously aware of it. And we might express things in a certain way or get triggered by things in a certain way that we aren't really aware of where it's coming from. For example, like, let's say you've been cheated on in the past. Okay. Let's say you've been cheated on in the past, and let's say you're going on new dates and you're trying to find the one. And let's say someone takes out their phone on a date, but let's say your partner always used to do that, who used to cheat on you. And you immediately think, nope, not being with this person. They're clearly a cheater, blah, blah, blah. You read into things that might not actually be there. It's the unconscious that's still triggered by the past that you might not be aware of. So that's an example of how that can manifest, how a shadow can manifest, but it can come from anything. And so shadow work is when we dive into those unconscious parts of ourselves. If you're ever feeling triggered, or if you're ever feeling negative, or if a pattern keeps happening into your life, being able to reflect on that and say, how might I be contributing to that? And how can I look within myself to see where that emotion or that pattern might be actually manifesting from me? And then you can maybe actually start to see and discover where it's stemming from. And through that awareness, it usually heals, because all of a sudden when we're aware of where we're getting these triggers from, we're like, oh, it's no longer going to trigger you in the same way, because someone might, do that same habit or pattern in the future. And you might be like, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same situation as the past. It can mean something completely different right now, and you're able to see clearer in that way. So shadow work is being able to go into that unconscious part of yourself and become aware of it, shed light on it by becoming consciously aware of it. So that is shadow work. It's a huge, amazing form of healing, and I'd say it's one of the best forms of healing.
Yeah, Carl Jung was the pioneer on this idea of the shadow. And he said that our life should be not about pursuing perfection, but wholeness. And everything is within every one of us. So let's take a shy person, for instance. Within a shy person, deep down inside them, there is a very assertive person who takes action. And doing shadow work might entail uncovering that assertive person within and harnessing that energy.
Yes.
And if you suppress it, you end up projecting it. Whatever you suppress, you project. Exactly.
And it'll constantly get triggered in you, and you might not even be aware of it. It causes patterns and cycles, and healing that is such an amazing thing, because you'll be able to break old cycles and patterns from happening in your life by doing that. But sometimes it's hard to accept that we might be at fault for something that we feel very justified in, like, no, they hurt me. And it's like, well, maybe it hurt because there's something within yourself that's getting triggered by it. And that's sometimes the hardest thing to do and the hardest thing to accept. However, there are also other situations where, we could actually be getting hurt by something, and maybe we just need the courage to remove ourselves from that situation and realize that we don't need to contribute to being there, because that can also be a shadow. Sometimes we put ourselves in situations where there are triggers, but it might be a trigger because maybe we have self-worth issues, so we keep putting ourselves in a situation that is negative for us and bad for us, and it might be stemming from a situation of not feeling worthy for something better. So that could also be part of the shadow too. That's just another example I wanted to throw in there.